Hi, this is Master Viktor Neustroyev. You know, it's a real pleasure to get your opponent trapped into an opening that you prepared well, or just create a trap during the game and enjoy the moment your opponent makes a move and gets into a trap. I'm sure every chess player wants it. But do you know how to set traps successfully? What to keep in mind and how to increase the chance that an opponent will fall into a trap? And at the same time, how to avoid traps yourself, what steps to follow to be able to recognize them until it's too late to do anything. This is what my students always ask, and this is what I'm going to explain in this video, how to successfully set traps and decoys and avoiding them yourself. Watch this video to the very end and you will learn how to increase the quality of your traps and how to not get trapped. How to set traps successfully? Good question. But before I show you an example and explain, I want you to remember that by setting a trap, you automatically assume that your opponent won't get trapped. It means that you should create such a trap that your position should be still good even if your opponent doesn't get trapped. If he is trapped, you can gain something or you can even get an absolutely winning position. But if he doesn't, your position still should be fine. In other words, the moves that you played to be able to create a trap shouldn't drift into a bad position for you. Okay, and now the example taken from my game that I played at Moscow Open. e4, c5, knight f3, e6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop c5. This is what my opponent played. This is quite a rare move. Bishop e3, queen b6. Putting some pressure on d4 and also attacking the b2 pawn. And here I decided to create a trap. I played knight a3. The trap is that if he takes on b2, the queen can be trapped. So, for example, I'll show you. Queen takes b2, knight a to b5, threatening to play knight c7, and also to cover some squares so the queen can't escape. If, for example, in this position, something like knight f6, I won't play knight c7, I will play a3, knight takes e4, rook b1, queen e2, and then after bishop d3, doesn't really matter how he plays, maybe he can just escape with his knight or play d5, then after rook b3, the queen is totally trapped and my next move is knight c3. The queen has no squares to go. That was my trap. If in this position he plays something else like bishop b4 for example, then king e2, knight a6, a3, and then I do the same idea with rook b3 and then knight c3, so the queen is trapped. Of course I can just play knight c7 and gain the exchange, but it's better to trap the queen. So that was my idea. What else could he do in this position? What in case if he doesn't get into a trap? What if he, for example, gives a check here? If so, I wanted to play queen to d2. c3 won't work in this position. Bishop b4 won't work in this position because of c3, and if he takes, I'll take with my king, and this endgame is much better for me because of the weakness of these dark squares, regardless of the double pawns on the a file. Instead of queen a5, he can play d5. This is what he exactly did in the game, because this is how he secures the c4 square. But I was prepared for this move, so I actually expected him not to take on b2, but to play d5, and here e takes d5, e takes d5, bishop b5 check. So I'm developed much better. All of my minor pieces are already developed. So if bishop d7, this is what I expected. I could castle, knight e7, c3. If he takes, then his queen becomes the object of the attack, and at least I can gain the pawn on d5 and also attack on b7. Of course I have double pawns, but my position is slightly better. This is what could happen in case if he plays properly and won't get trapped. However, in this position he made a real blunder. He played knight c6. And then after knight c6, b takes c6, and just queen d5. So if he takes my bishop with his pawn, I can either take the rook or just deliver a check on e5 and then take the bishop on c5. He played queen takes b5 with the idea that if I take his queen, he takes mine, but actually after queen e4 he just loses the queen for nothing, for just one piece, and the game was over. So once again, here I played knight a3, maybe not the strongest move in this position, but this is a definitely move that creates a trap, and if he takes, I'm fine, I'm trapping the queen. If not, I'm still good and can continue playing this position with at least a small advantage. Okay, the other thing you should remember is that you should mask your threat. It should be a well-hidden trap. For example, you make a move and it has at least two ideas behind it. One is obvious for your opponent, so he is able to recognize it, but at the same time not very obvious. And the other one is a hidden idea, usually even stronger than the first one. I'll show you an example, and this is where you can understand what I'm talking about and maybe learn and try to apply such traps in your games. e4, e5, knight f3, knight e6, bishop c4, d6. So this position is taken from my student's game, d4, and bishop g4. So here white has several moves like h3, d5, but the strongest one is c3. Knight f6. I taken the pawn on e4. At least it looks like that. What can white do? For example, queen b3 is a good move here. d5 is another good continuation. But if you, for example, don't see these moves, you can just play bishop e2. What's the idea of this move? First, it looks like you want to get rid of this pin because you have to protect the pawn on d4 with your queen, and you don't want to take on f3 with the g-pawn. That's why you play bishop e2. But this is how we'll leave the pawn on e4 unprotected. And for example, your opponent can take. If so, we play d5, the knight on c6 is hanging, it has to move, and after queen a4 we just gain a knight on e4, just for one pawn. If he doesn't take and plays another move, for example bishop e7, we still have a good position. Here we can play d5, knight goes probably back, and in this position either castle, queen c2, knight d2, bishop e3, anything. The pawn is not hanging because of the check on a4. After he castles, then yes, we should do something. Well, maybe castle in this position is a good move. Okay, so this is a good example of a good trap, especially if you don't see how to play in this position. And now, how to avoid traps. The first and the main principle that you should follow to be able to avoid traps is always try to understand the logic behind opponent's moves. Every time he plays a move, ask yourself, what does he want to do with this move? What is his plan? If you can't answer immediately, then think and spend more time on it. And imagine that it's you playing with enemy pieces, and now ask yourself, why would I play this move if I were him? What for? If you can successfully unravel the enemy plan, you do the main thing. However, the second principle is to anticipate your opponent's next move before you make your own move. So, before you make your own move on the board, ask yourself what your opponent's natural response can be. Again, if you can't answer this question, ask yourself, what would I do if I were him, in response to the move I'm going to play right now, and then you'll find. For example, in this position, black played queen to g5. What does he want to do? He is attacking on g2, but g2 is protected with the knight. So probably his plan is to sacrifice the rook on e3 and then take on g2 with his queen and deliver a checkmate. What can we do? For example, we can play g3. This is maybe the most natural response. Then if rook e3, f takes e3, queen takes e3, rook f2, rook takes d4, I think the position is unclear. Maybe white is better, but it's difficult to prove it. Moreover, he can just play king b8 for now and take on e3 later, and by playing g3 we weaken the light squares. We are one pawn up, but I'm not sure that we are much better in this position because we have to defend our king then. If you, in this position, spend a little bit more time, you may create a counter trap and just play rook c1. What's the idea of this move? If he doesn't take on a3, you play d5 on the next move. For example, king b8, you can play d5, he takes with the bishop, but then just h4, trying to distract the queen. If queen moves, then we just take the bishop on d5 for free. But if queen e5, the only safe square on the 5th rank to be able to protect the bishop on d5, then rook c5, and by using this pin we gain a piece. If he doesn't take but play this move, then just rook e1 and we are much better because we are one pawn up, there is no kingside attack. However, here he may just take on e3. What kind of trap we prepared in this position? What do we want to do on the next move? Of course, we don't want to get a checkmate on g2, that's why we don't take the rook, but we take on c6. So he sacrificed the exchange, now we can do the same thing. And in this position, instead of taking on e3, after which we lose 2 pawns, we can play queen c1 and use the pin, because there is no safe square to be able to retreat with the rook and protect the queen at the same time. So what can happen in this position? Probably rook takes d4, then queen c6, king b8, and just rook c1. So threatening with queen c8, checkmate, or just take this rook on a1. So what to do? Maybe this move is enough. If so, then at least we can capture on a3, queen a3, and then play king h1, because his king is much weaker. However, instead of taking this rook, maybe we can also deliver a check on c7. I think that's enough. That's enough just to take. Okay, fine. So by playing rook c1, you create a counter trap in this position. And if he takes, what is a logical and natural response from him, he'll be trapped. In this video, you'll learn how to set traps successfully and how to avoid them yourself. Thank you for watching, and make sure to like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and share it with your friends chess players. If you want to share your experience when you trapped your opponent or fell into a nice trap, please leave a comment and share these games into the comment section below this video. You can also leave the link to your games there. You know, traps can be created at any stage of the game, and if you would like to trap your opponent into the opening stage, I highly recommend you to watch the video on the screen next to learn 7 best chess opening traps. Okay, watch this video and I'll see you there in a moment.